Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Matt DeLockery. I believe three things: God exists, Jesus rose from the dead, and American Christianity is broken. Now, in past series, I've spent some time talking about the first one. I've given a couple arguments or series of reasons for why we think God exists, or why there's good reason to think that God exists. I'm going to cover the next one, that Jesus actually rose from the dead, in a future series. We'll talk about historical reasons to think that he actually did rise from the dead. In this series, though, we're going to talk about the third one: why American Christianity is broken, or more specifically, what's wrong with it. And today we're going to get into one of those issues, and that's poor leadership. You see, the way pastors and other Christian leaders get hired in American Christianity is a bit different than most people would expect. It's like when you go in for an interview, there's a lot of things that you expect to find. There's a lot of questions about, your experience and your education, and like, if you got this job, how would you do it? All the normal sorts of things that you expect in any job that you were looking for. But when you interview for a ministry position, and I've done this a lot over the last more than a decade, there's always something more. There's always just one extra little thing that you don't, or that most people don't really expect. And I discovered this completely, by surprise. The first time that, one of the first times I was in an interview, we're going along and I'm getting asked all the normal sorts of questions. And, then all of a sudden, like at one point, the guy interviewing me just sort of leans across the table. It's like, how many people can you bring in the first year? And I was completely shocked. I'm like, how is this even a question? I'm like, I thought the whole point here was trying to learn how to, love God more and to act more like him and so forth, and not how many people can you bring in the first year. And I gave some sort of an answer that was about quality over quantity, and that's, not really why we're here, and something like that. I knew as soon as I was giving it that, like, I was never going to get the job because that's not what they were looking for, but that's the right answer. So I gave it and didn't get the job. But it's like, it shocked me. And then when I thought, well, maybe it's just this one church. But like not too long after that, I was interviewing at another place, and they asked, so what gets you into ministry? Why are you in ministry? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? What do you hope for? Perfectly reasonable question. And so I said, well, I just want to know God better, and I want to understand the Bible better, and I want to teach people about both, which seemed to me like a perfectly reasonable answer to a perfectly reasonable question. Well, the response that I got was, yeah, well, we don't actually hire Bible teachers. We're just trying to create an environment. And I'm thinking, like, excuse me? It's like, where in the Bible does it talk about you're trying to create an environment? That's not what this thing is about. And it's like this a lot. You don't always see this like in church. You don't always see what goes on behind the scenes until you start interviewing for these sorts of positions. And then you find out, okay, that's what they're really looking for. Nice. But I think you do get some hints of it when you see all the emphasis on how many people you get in a room, and how big our numbers are, like and why we're not willing to do or say anything that could potentially rock the boat and make some people leave because we just can't handle that. Like, I think you start to get a sense of what the number one qualification for a pastor or a Christian leader is in America. How many people can you bring in the door? That's it. That's what it's all about. And I think this sort of thing is actually behind another problem that we've been seeing a lot. Like every month or so now, it seems that some other Christian leader or, big name Christian somebody has fallen because of some sort of sexual sin or money or, what have you. And I think the problem behind that is that we're hiring the wrong sorts of people. When we're asking the question, how many people can you bring in the first year? You're going to get people who are going to answer that question well. We're essentially trying to find like Christian rock stars. I mean, we don't want actual rock stars. We want them to be a little bit tamer, skinny jeans, latte sipping, say nice things about Jesus kind of rock star. So, a little bit down, but still somebody who's exciting and gets people in the door, makes you want to be there. Or maybe even somebody who's not quite that, but it's like, well, I'm not that amazing, charismatic personality, but I'm really good at creating a community environment everybody wants to be a part of. And when we walk in the door, there's a whole bunch of warm fuzzies. And isn't this wonderful to be a part of here? You're still asking the question, how many people can you get in the first year or the first 5 years or 10 years? And that's your goal for this. And when you're seeking that sort of a person, you're going to get that sort of a person. And they're not necessarily going to have the other traits that you really want. And this is all wrong. This is not how we should be looking for people in Christianity. If I'm looking at going to a church, I have one question that I ask. Does the person down front know God? That's it. Do they know God? Preferably better than me. Because my goal in participating in a Christian anything is to know God better. So ideally, I want someone who's closer to God than I am. So that person can tell me, this is how you move a little bit closer. That's what I want. And that should be the only thing. But the problem is, we're not interested in people who can teach you about God or teach you what the Bible says. What we want is someone who can talk about the Bible in an engaging way. Right? It's not, can you explain what the Bible means? It's, can you speak about the Bible in an engaging way? Can you create an environment where people feel like they're really part of a community when they walk in the door? Not, is this somewhere that's going to help me look and act more like God? That's what we should be really after. And you need someone who's closer than you to do that. So everything that we're doing is backwards. And let me be fair. I understand that you need people in the door to keep the building and to bring in money, to pay salaries, to keep the building, open, and so on and so forth. Whether churches need to be doing things the way they are and focusing so much on money is another topic. And believe me, we're going to get into that, down the road a ways. But even assuming that's true, that's not what you want out of your pastor. Find other people to do that. You hire them, or even better yet, if the pastor's doing their job and helping you become closer to God, then the people who are around, the people who are part of the church, are going to go tell their friends, my church is something else. The pastor isn't always the best speaker, and I don't always get a bunch of warm fuzzies when I walk in the door, and everything's not rainbows and unicorns. But you know what? I'm closer to God now than I was last year, and even more than I was the year before that. And if you come, then you can be closer to God too. That's what church is supposed to be about. Everything else is a distraction. And we're hiring leaders based on the wrong qualifications. We're asking, how many people can you bring in? We're trying to find little rock stars that are just a little bit more tame, but they end up not being actually more tame, as we've continually find out. There's only one question that matters in a Christian leader. Does that person know God? Everything else is meaningless.